to the How to Get an Analytics Job podcast. So today we're doing something new. I don't think we've ever actually done this before. So I'm sitting here across from one of my current students here at Greensboro College, and we're going to be talking about 5 specific things. So number one, we're going to be introducing him, kind of give some background on where he's at right now. We're going to also be talking about his skills and experience. We're going to be talking about the job hunt, both kind of at a high level, and then also what he is going through as far as, what status he's at right now, what kind of anxieties, what kind of worries he might have. And then finally, we're going to do some mock interview questions. So, Dejuan, welcome. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, thank you so much. I mean, this was kind of last moment. We're actually studying the podcast in class. So I don't know if we can get any more meta than we are right now. But it turns out that you have been doing content creation for about a year. So sometimes I actually just pull you up to the front of the classroom and let you kind of talk about what you know, and then I'll fill in any knowledge gaps.
Yeah.
So I guess just quickly introduce yourself, like what's your background, your current goals, and kind of what are you going through right now?
I am from Riverdale, Maryland. I am currently a senior at Greensboro College. I major in business administration with a minor in business analytics. My goals are to just get a job in my career, hopefully in analytics, even if it's just an entry level job. Past that, life goals. I'm a simple guy. I just want to be able to pay my bills, do my
Yeah.
hobbies, and hopefully spend time with my family if I have one. What was the third one? My bad.
So I guess the current status, so I guess I can kind of fill it in. So you were rounding out the last semester of your senior year.
Yes.
So now is when you need to kind of get your personal brand tightened up. We're getting on your LinkedIn, your resume, and then also getting you prepped up for the interview process. Because I mean, literally, you just got your first interview set up.
Yes.
Like we had class at I think 1 yesterday. So I mean, this is like in real time happening. So I mean, I guess let's kind of start with what skills and what experience do you have? Because I know that I think I looked at your LinkedIn before this, so you're about 10 months in to like working a job currently. So I guess could you tell me a little bit about that?
My current job is at the Greensboro Board ABC stores. There we just do usual sales associate stuff, just talking to customers, recommending them drinks, helping them find drinks. But we also have times where they want us to push a certain product or sales on a certain product. Like if we get sales on like allocated drinks, which are basically like if you're for anybody who drinks, it's bourbon, it's Buffalo Trace, Eagle Rare, Weller's, Blanton's, EH Taylor, those kind of drinks. We kind of when we get them, we put them out. We put them out fast. A lot of people, it's a hot seller because it's rare to get. Everybody wants something that's scarce. So yeah, we do that. It's a lot of basic store maintenance, but when it comes to that job, I think it's very undervalued being
Yeah.
a sales associate like to people who drink regularly. Just sometimes having to deal with people who sometimes come in and they're not up to the standard of the store. They're not at their
Hmm.
best, and just having to deny them and seeing how they can act when denied their
Gotcha.
drinks.
Okay, so you're kind of getting into like customer management a little
Yeah,
bit, um, maybe risk liability, like
yeah,
mitigating risk.
yeah. Mitigating risk, just being able to de-escalate situations, being able to also just being able to help people in general, help people who sometimes don't know they're asking for a gift for their wife or their family, just being able to help them. But other than that, currently doing the internship with you, which
Mm.
we are studying this very podcast, looking at the audience curves and the retention curves on this podcast to
Yeah.
help push content and create. Did we decide if we were going with the short clips? I don't remember. I apologize.
Um, yeah, so we'll get into this a little bit more because this is kind of what I guess to tease the audience a little bit. Like, this is what we're going to talk about as far as the mock interview question. I'm going to ask you, like, hey, I see that you know, for 3 months at a student practicum where you got to work with real data. Tell me about that. So we'll kind of get into that a little bit more specific in the context of a mock interview question. But I guess okay, so that kind of gives a good breakdown of your experience. But as far as skills go, I mean, one of the things we were talking about, like when we were kind of diagnosing the podcast, the last episode we pushed out, like I mean, I guess we can get into it a little bit. So when we looked at well, before we even get into what the results were, what data did we look at?
We looked at audience retention curve, and then we also looked at who is watching the videos. We looked at the views and the unique. We also talked about unique views
Right,
within versus
new
just
people.
regular views. Yeah, those are things that we looked at. We also looked at where where are people peaking
Right.
in the retention curve.
So yeah,
So
which I think is a really interesting concept, especially for those who are listening. Like, you probably don't think about like the analytics that's behind media consumption, but what is the audience retention curve?
the audience retention curve is basically how long somebody is watching the video or how long they stay on the video. And
Right.
basically, if it was to be shown in a graph, it would basically be like a line. And imagine at the top of that line is when you first click on the video.
Which is at 100%.
Yeah, it's at 100.
Yeah.
Your line can either stay at that rate or it can slowly drop. But
Or it could rapidly drop.
yeah, it could rapidly drop as well.
Yeah.
But with that retention curve, if your retention curve is steadily constant throughout the video, everybody was able to understand your video, watch your video, and they continued watching it without feeling like this video is talking about something that I'm not
Right.
looking for.
So yeah, so the dips are when you essentially lose their interest.
Yes.
Like they're switching off, or it could be that they're fast forwarding, right?
Yes.
So what can we do with that retention curve? Because there's different ways to look at it, right? So what you're talking about is like the aggregate view. So that's everyone who viewed it. We can look at it like that. What can we do as far as the aggregation goes?
We can look at it and see where are we getting spikes, and then we can go to that retention curve and we can look at the spikes in the video, and we can say, okay, this is an interesting topic from our podcast. A lot of
Gotcha.
people came back and looked at this,
Hmm.
and like I said when we were in class, we can just take that portion,
Hmm.
put it into a short clip, and if we both looked at it and was like, I feel like this is very informative, we can post that as a short clip to have people who didn't see the podcast still gain a piece of information about
Right.
what we're producing.
Well, I guess what I was trying to kind of lead you with a little bit with like the Socratic question method is we can change the aggregation. So you were describing it as the total audience, but if we change it to how it relates to other videos performances, that's where we can see the spikes. So what now we're doing is going back and looking at each week's podcast episode and identifying where those spikes are, listening back to it, figuring out what the topics are, and then we're using AI to clip the podcast as it relates to those specific topics. So essentially, if we lose somebody early on in the episode, we can post a short and then retarget those people who dropped off. So it's a way to, it's essentially like an awareness campaign from a marketing standpoint, which I think is really cool. But okay, we're nerding out too hard in the details, I guess. So this is kind of the experience you've gained, which I think is awesome, and it's great that you can articulate it pretty well. Like you're able to sit down and explain it. I mean, part of it's because like you guys are doing the work. I'm not spoon feeding it to you. I'm like, here's the goal. You guys figure it out, and then I'm kind of here to play a support role and then kind of manage the project. But tell me about the skills that you developed, because we've been together for 2 semesters now.
I've the first was in Power BI. That also helped me with the previous internship, and I could get into that later if you would like. That kind of getting better at Excel, honing my skills in Excel was something that your class helped me a lot with, and just overall data visualization and project management. Being able to even, like you said, cut up AI clips and also go back in and make it even better and make it even more focused and more targeted audience, because sometimes AI can be great in producing all those clips, but I still
It's kind of dumb.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a weird way.
Yeah.
It's like hyper competent, but also it lacks any type of wisdom or judgment in a way.
So like sometimes like there are certain clips where it may say it's talking about this topic, but if you were a normal person watching it, you wouldn't even
Make
you
that
wouldn't
connection.
yeah, you wouldn't even make the connection, and being able just going back in and being able to edit those and being able to make sure those are reaching the right audience or even speak on the right subject when relating to the topic at hand. That's something that I've gained
Yeah.
from this.
And I guess let me ask you this. Do you have a way to show, let's say you show up into an interview in the next few weeks. Let's say it goes well with this kind of phone screening that you're about to go through. If you were on like a Zoom call, do you have a way to kind of showcase the work that you've done?
I would be able to showcase in my previous internship before I started with you, I did data analysis for our college football team
Yeah.
where I took their practice penalties and errors and I managed them. I organized it, cleaned it up, and put it in Excel and then transferred it over into the data visualization tool of Power BI.
Mhm.
And I made the graphs. I made the graphs and I made the line charts for the comparison from their in-game penalties and mistakes to their practice. And I was able to show the ratio and comparison between those two within those line graphs, while also showing the way my supervisor, which was the coach,
Head coach, yeah.
the way he wanted it was he wanted to be able to see week by week the penalties and the number of penalties, which is also what I did. So I was able
Yeah.
to visualize that with the drop down toolbar. You can click on the week, each game week, and it'll show you the practice penalties and mistakes and then the games. And he said he just wanted to be able to see where are we overlapping, where are we having too much of a problem in. And I made that visible to him through Power BI. So that is something that can show to
Yeah.
potential recruiters or employers when they ask me to show
Right.
work
Because
experience.
let me ask you this: did you have a test last semester?
Did I have a test?
No.
No, I didn't.
Your test was your portfolio. So like the I did this with intention because I mean, what's a better story when you show up for that interview of, hey, I got an A+ on this test versus here are 3 projects I've worked on. I'd be happy to show you the use case and show you the UI, and uncover some insights within this data that I analyzed. I mean, so like whether you realize it or not, I've been slowly trying to help you prep for the transition that's coming. What, 2 months?
Yeah.
2 months away?
2 months.
I guess that's kind of a perfect segue into the third topic that we wanted to cover was how's the job hunt coming along?
It's not going
I mean,
good.
your face, for those of you who are listening in audio, your face is not looking super confident, which is understandable because, I mean, going from college to working is a huge transition. And especially like we were kind of talking, like the market's a little tough right now.
It's not going well, but like we did say at the beginning of the podcast, I did get a text back for a Zoom interview with Crown Royal Campaigns. So I have that Monday. So I hope that goes well. But aside of that, it has not been going well.
Well, okay. Is it not going well, or do you feel like maybe you need to adjust your expectations? Like, let me ask you this: how many jobs have you applied for?
90.
90. Okay. What is the timeline on that?
The timeline, as in
Like if you applied for 90 jobs and it's been 2 months, that's probably a bad sign. But if like some of the jobs you applied have been a matter of weeks or maybe even a month, like sometimes you don't hear a call back for 6 weeks on a job. So I just want to kind of like give you that zoomed out perspective on it.
and I'm probably not used to that. Probably because of the jobs I worked previously, they usually hit you back within like a week or
Right.
2. So that's probably something I need to adjust to. But it's been over the span of 3 months.
Okay.
So I've been getting some rejection emails later where they've been moving on with a different applicant, which is I'm fine with.
Yeah, you're expected.
Yeah, that's natural. At least I feel like at least you're looking at my resume, so it's or somebody or some type of system is. So
Yeah.
at least it's being looked at. I think that I'm not getting discouraged. I think that eventually,
Well, you just said it wasn't going
yeah,
well.
yeah, it's not going well, but I'm not surprised
Okay.
because of one, not my experience, but just I don't have that much of a networking as
Yeah.
we spoke on in previous classes. I think I just need to build my network more to be able to open
Right.
more doors than just cold applying. As
Yeah.
in, when cold applying, there could always be somebody who has more experience, even at an entry level position, than I do.
Right.
So just opening my networks, which one of them is you, and
Yeah.
another
Yeah.
one can be the camera guy, Craig.
Craig over here, our personal Jamie.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, because I've invited you guys out because I host a fairly regular meetup, and it's funny because you guys were like 6 p.m. on a Wednesday, but now you're getting it. While I was like, this is important because there's a whole hidden job market out there. Like what you're seeing on LinkedIn or Indeed or whatever is it's the highest hurdle to jump over. Like these jobs are getting hundreds of applicants within the first 24 hours. So like you as a student who haven't worked as an analyst full time yet, like it's a big challenge to get up above that. Now you can kind of play the numbers game and just, like I was saying, one strategy is just get your one clicks apply set up. So every 24 hours, every analytics, or it doesn't even have to be analytics. It could be you want to get into marketing specialist jobs, any jobs that are relevant for you, just every 24 hours posting and being on top of that. So you're at the top of that list. But yeah, the kind of the hidden job market or like kind of the back door into the job is to know somebody who is either hiring or know somebody who just got asked, hey, do you know somebody who's looking for an entry level job?
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like I get that door on top of the cold applying. I feel like I'll eventually I'll get somewhere, or I'm not, and that's probably why I'm not too anxious. I know it'll take time,
Yeah.
and I don't feel like I need to be in as much of a rush as it's perceived. So I just feel like as long as I just keep doing what I'm doing, I feel like my resume is up to date, my LinkedIn profile is
Yeah.
polished. I feel like I've set myself up for the opportunities at hand, so I just have to keep knocking on the door.
Can you unpack that a little bit more? So when you say you feel good about your LinkedIn and your resume, why do you feel that way?
Because of some of it, most of it, I'm not going to say some of it, most of it was just having my resume looked over.
Yeah.
And also by you, and also by our careers and development.
Specialist?
Yes. Karen Atwater. Both of you looking at my resume, and then also just using everybody says keywords, making
Right.
sure it's actually related to the jobs I'm applying for, and using the experience and actually accolades that I've gained throughout my internships and my jobs in my profile. So not just rambling on about duties, but like in my resume it says I boosted sales of special order drinks by 15% at my store, which is
That's
something.
fantastic. Like, can we pause there and kind of dig into that a little bit?
Yeah.
So like what you've done is you've quantified the work you've done. And I would say the vast majority of people are not doing that. It's like they list out roles and responsibilities. They don't list out the impact that they've had within a business. So what do you think that signals?
I think that signals that I'm actually profitable, or helping the business make profit. That's what I
Yeah.
look at
Well,
it as.
I would say it signals that you have the correct mindset. Like you are looking at it from instead of let me just be this person who does all these lists of tasks. You're actually thinking critical about it. Like you're getting your job done, but you're also thinking about ways that you can potentially optimize, or you know what are the levers that you can pull to make things go even better. So like having that kind of mindset ports over really well to a full-time job. So I think you're in really good shape there.
Thank you.
All right. So how's your LinkedIn?
I think my LinkedIn is good. I'll say
Yeah.
good. I won't say my LinkedIn is great. I think I need to kind of go into more depth about the actual skills that I've attained from the internships and the jobs that I've worked.
Yeah.
I just think that some of them are like kind of too broad, and then some of them
Right.
aren't like really narrowed down within, like, if for the one I did, the sports analyst I did with my football team, I could say I did a project management, because technically me uploading the data into
Yeah. You
Excel.
managed it. Like
Yeah.
they gave you a directive and then you broke it down into steps and you took all those steps.
Yeah.
We can go even further. Like, data governance. You collected all the data, then you put it into a form that was actually clean and able to be uploaded into a BI tool. And then you took that and you visualized it in a way that the head coach could interpret, and then they could, go back and rework, their training, because you guys
Yeah.
did like crazy training
Yeah.
last semester, right?
Yeah, in season and out of season, we like right now. Even though I'm not on the team since I'm graduating, but right now for spring ball, they do basically like cardio runs 5 days a week, lift 3 days a week, and then they have meetings and other things throughout the week. So this is
Yeah.
like each week. And we're not even in season.
But I mean, speak to me a little bit about how does the data that you created help with that whole process?
So it helps with it as when it comes to just the coaches, like basically teaching their positions or the head coach coaching his team overall and coaching his coaches, his staff.
Mhm.
It's okay if our running backs fumbled the ball a lot. Okay, I as a head coach, I need to talk to my running backs coach and see what we need to think of something to help reduce this because
Right.
turning over the ball is never a good thing. If our if we're getting a lot of unsportsmanlike conduct penalties, which is basically like if a play is over and the ref blows the play dead, one of our players pushes somebody else, that's unsportsmanlike.
Yeah.
So why are we doing that? That's us. That's us as a team. We need to sit down as a
And
coaching
like
staff,
address the culture
yeah, and address
within
the culture of the
the
team.
team.
Those are things that the head coach will now have to think about, or now be like going into the next game. Okay, we had 2 fumbles this week during practice. We need to focus on ball security, focus on not fumbling the ball. We need to do a lot of ball security drills so that we can help reduce this going into our game this Saturday.
Yeah.
Those are just ways that just me with a football background know that these are things that a head coach would more than likely say to his staff to help reduce these
Yeah.
mistakes that they're making.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really unique kind of setup in that you are helping kind of your manager in this or coach.
Yeah.
Coach and manager, I guess.
Coach.
Well, but like the coach is managing the team.
Yeah.
So I'm like thinking about like the title is coach. Functionally speaking, they're managing all the players and like how things are going. So you were playing a role in helping them optimize.
Yes.
So I mean that's pretty cool. And like taking that mindset, you could potentially port that over to an entry level job where you're, proactively getting things done, but then also thinking at a higher level of like how can we optimize, what can we do to improve overall performance. So that's awesome. Okay, so overall with the job hunt, how would you? This is an interesting question. Out of a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel like it's going?
Um,
Because bear in mind, like you just got your first interview and you have 2 months before you graduate.
I'll give it a 6.
A 6? Okay.
I'll give it a 6 just because, like you said, I got the interview, but also I feel like even though it's not a lot of analysts or entry level analyst jobs that I'm looking for, there are still potential opportunities for me to get my foot in the door, like you said, through marketing, through being a marketing specialist, or
Right.
even through other business positions. So it's not like being an analyst. Yes, I would like to be an analyst at the end of my career towards the back end, but just getting my foot in the door, there are a lot of opportunities for me to just enter the business world and
Right.
start my job in the business world.
And this was a conversation that we had in class, 2 or 3 weeks ago? Because every week, like what I've worked into the capstone course this semester is a career service component of it. Of you need to start applying early, and just kind of get your head in the game of it's going to be a transition. Once this semester is over, it's not like you're going to the next semester and it's comfortable and you're kind of going out into the great unknown. So understanding that that's rapidly approaching, like we've started having you apply for analyst jobs, but I mean, I guess I was about to tell, but like, what has been my advice as far as cold applying for jobs?
It's it's not the best way, but it's like you said, the routine you gave us was like you said, easy apply, refresh every day.
Right.
But your main advice was it can work. It's just it's a
Well,
lot of
it's
work.
a numbers game
Yeah.
because like I think back 9 months ago when I accepted the role that I'm in now, I think I applied to 196 jobs and I got interviews with 5 companies. So I mean that's what 2.5% roughly speaking. And this is somebody with 8 years of experience, an undergrad in economics, and an MBA, and like quite a few quantified wins under my belt. And I'm not saying that to like discourage you, but just to kind of give you like a hey, this is this is the state of the job market right now. It's not great for analysts. Um, that being said, what did we talk about as far as the keywords that you're targeting?
Like you said, the category analyst. So like you said, being you could be a marketing analyst, you could be a data analyst, you could also I forgot what you said
So
yours
I
was.
guess the point that I'm trying to make is that when the market is down, you may have to be a little bit flexible on the jobs that you target. So instead of trying to get an analyst job right out of the gate, you may want to target marketing specialist jobs. And there's a lot more of those. So maybe you get a marketing specialist job, you would get access to marketing data on some level. Then, you work that for a year, maybe 2 years, and then keep applying for marketing analyst jobs while you're doing that. And then you're a lot more competitive that second round because you're not completely fresh out of college and you've worked within marketing. So you have, a track record of understanding the context in which the data is used. And then that's where the skills that you developed in my classroom are going to kind of come back full circle. Because it's tough. I mean, I'm like anxious for you guys because the market is not very great right now. But I mean, you're gonna land on your feet. I mean, you proactively reached out to me what a year before you got into my classroom.
Yes.
So like, I mean, I have full confidence that you're gonna be able to land something, and then once you get in, you're gonna work really hard. You're going to rack up some wins, and it's just gonna be kind of like that first hurdle though is gonna be tough. But then once you're in, I think you're gonna do great. All right. So do you have any questions for me? So we've talked about the introduction, your skills, your experience, the job hunt. I mean, any questions that you want to ask me about that?
I mean, not really, just because you're also my teacher, so like you kind of give me everything that you know about the job hunt, and the job hunting process as you've been through it yourself.
Yeah.
Um, I don't really have any questions about the job hunt.
All right. So you ready to jump into the mock interview section?
Yes.
Because I don't think I prepped you a little bit on this, but I think this first question you're kind of going in blind. All right. Let's get into scene here. Dejuan, thank you for coming to this interview. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
I am a senior in Greensboro. I'm a senior at Greensboro College. Wow. Yeah, I'm a senior at Greensboro College with a major in business administration with a minor in business analytics. I have taken 2 internships. One I'm still currently in my years at Greensboro College. One was a sports analyst role where I helped my football team through my head coach as my supervisor collect data on their penalty and game errors in practice and in game, and relating those two help the team help optimize and build better overall performance for the team. The second one that I am in is a student practicum where I basically look at podcast data and the analytics of a podcast and monitor the retention curve and the audience curve to then pull clips and shorts from the podcast using AI to better push publicity towards the podcast.
Okay. Um, that was pretty good. Let me give you some feedback. So I would back up. You got very specific. So like you went directly into the projects. Um, one way to, and I don't think we talked about this in class yet. So I mean, you, the audience here is kind of getting like the real experience of like me coaching you through this. Um, so with tell me about yourself. I typically it's like 3 points. I mean, you could break it down into, you know, the past, the present, and the future. Or I mean, you could break it down. It's tricky because it's hard with you in that usually when you're getting asked that question about tell me about yourself, like you've worked for a while, so that kind of gives you something concrete to root down on. But maybe let's stick to that framework. So like if you could give me one sentence about the past, one sentence about the present, and one sentence about the future. And maybe I need to do you think I need to give you a little bit more context?
Probably context on the
Okay, so
past and the future. I feel like I can
okay.
understand the present.
So you could say something like, I've always been interested in data and numbers and strategy. So this is why I actually majored in business analytics. And then once I got into my business analytics minor classes, I really enjoyed what I was doing, where I got to work with, huge data sets. I got exposed to like real world business use cases and I got to build out a portfolio, which I'd be happy to show you. In the future, what I would like to do is land an entry level marketing analyst job where I get to work with marketing data to help them maximize their ROI. So something like that, to where your initial response was very specific, to where it's like the tell me about yourself is just kind of an icebreaker question, you know?
Yeah,
Like if I were to ask you, give me a breakdown of this specific project, then you go into the details.
got you.
You want to try it again?
Yeah, I'd like to try that.
All right.
I need to
All right.
redo it.
So Dejuan, tell me a little bit about yourself.
So I am a senior at Greensboro College with a major in business administration and a minor in business analytics. I got into the business major in general, just because ever since I was young, I realized that businesses, not gonna say run the world, but we rely on businesses a lot.
Yeah.
And what got me into the analyst minor was always wanted to help businesses grow through looking, even if it was just through looking at their data sets. I always felt like me finding that one little tweak or that one little thing that can help a business boost their profit, even if it's by only 5%. I feel like helping any business grow that's great for me. That's what I want to do. I want to be able to help businesses just grow in general.
Mhm.
Doesn't matter what it is. And yes, I would like to hopefully, if this was a real job, I would like to land this job position, hopefully at your company. And I hope that your company would be able to take the risk on me in this entry level role. Hopefully it being an analyst.
Yeah. Uh, well, how did that feel versus the first one?
I think the first one was I think it was just me trying to push what I've done, my experiences too fast. And I think I just needed to give them more about just me as a person. I felt like
Right.
I felt like the second part was more organic. It didn't feel like I was forcing it. It kind of just felt like this is why I'm here. Like this, you're kind of
Yeah.
getting a little why into why.
Well, it's almost like you took a breath. You're like, I'm connecting with you as a human here at a high level. I still feel like you went on a little bit too much into the details, but it was exceptionally better from the second take versus the first take. So just kind of making it more conversational. Um, but no, then also too, like have you ever heard of this concept of like data granularity or just granular in general? So if you're out in the working world, there's layers of management. So the C-suite is interested in a specific level of detail. Middle management is interested in a different level, and then the boots on the ground, kind of the individual contributors, are way into the weeds. I think when you're having that question about tell me about yourself, they're kind of wanting that C-suite high level view. It's just it's breaking the number one, functionally speaking, it's breaking the ice. But number two, it kind of gives them some threads to pull on. So, oh, you're interested in improving, you know, ROI on marketing. Tell me about that. Like what have you looked at before? That kind of is a conversation starter. And you want them, you can almost think of it like a dance. Like you give them kind of that high level view, and then you let them guide the conversation through the questions they ask. Because what I've seen, because I've been coaching people to getting their first analytics job for like, I guess, 3 or 4 years. And what you don't want to do is like a Neil deGrasse Tyson monologue. We're not talking about the moon and the stars and going off on this huge detail. It's like, answer the question. Yeah, I mean, you want to give some detail, but not a ton. And then if they ask you about it, then you drill down. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. Speaking on the detail, the next question I got for you is, what experience do you have within analytics?
So I have two, which are internships that I've taken. One was with my college through their football team, where I was a sports analyst managing their practice and game era data. The second was through a capstone class where I managed podcast retention curves in AI data. Which one would you like to hear about first?
Tell me about the podcast.
So within the podcast, we were managing a podcast called How to Get an Analytics Job. And within that podcast, our professor would show us the retention curve and basically the analytics behind the podcast. We would mainly look at the retention curve and the audience groove, and we would look at that and we would determine what parts of the podcast are the audience looking at the most, which parts are they going down on, which parts are they staying constant with. And what we surmised was that we would post clips on the parts that the audience looked at the most. So we would
Mhm.
pull however long the professor wanted to be, a minute, 30 seconds to a minute, and we will pull it. We will let AI clip the whole podcast, and we will pull we decided on 2 to 3 clips, 2 to 3 good quality clips that we felt were very informative and would garner retention.
Mhm.
That's what we did.
Okay, that's intriguing to me, because our company we know about AI, but it's still this kind of vague thing. Can you be a little bit more explicit about what AI tool did you use and what was the use case for that?
So we used Raven, it was Ravenside, and we used Raven.
Riverside.
Yeah, we used Riverside. We used Riverside, and basically what we did was like I said, we would post the whole podcast, and we would put keywords. We would have the AI look for keywords throughout the podcast, and the AI would clip those keywords. If they felt like one of the keywords matched up, they would clip it. Now, the only downside to that is sometimes the keywords in the video itself would not align, as in the topic at hand would not match what the title of the video is. So then we would have to go back in manually and then edit it and make sure that this is actually a topic that somebody would care about, or we would just delete it overall just because it wasn't relevant to what we were looking for at the time. So with AI, it was great for mass producing clips and helping us cut down on the manual labor, but we still had to find that fine line between the quality over quantity aspect.
Gotcha. Sorry, I'm just taking notes to kind of like come back. Um, okay, so did you see how that conversation went? So I asked you about, and I'm out of character, by the way. So this is no longer interview John David. Did you see how that conversation went though? I asked you about the project, and then you mentioned AI, and then I made a note. Oh, AI is important to us. We know that we need to adapt to it, but we are not there yet. So that gives you an opportunity to kind of go in and just elaborate more. But you don't want to throw all of the detail out at all the time. So did that kind of give you kind of a
Yes.
representation of how those conversations can flow more smoothly?
Yes. So kind of even with that, with my answer to your question, kind of cut back on how much I'm giving into the project. So
Right. And maybe this is like way over analyzing this, but it seems like you might feel not very confident, and the way that you're overcompensating with that for that lack of confidence is by oversharing details. Does that I hope that's not like too harsh a criticism.
no, that's
So
understandable.
you're like trying to show, here's all the things that I've done, And then it's so much detail that you kind of lose the forest for the trees. And then it's like, okay, he mentioned 16 different things. I don't know where to go from here. Um, because it's just kind of overwhelming from a conversational. Because at the end of the day, I mean, an interview is a conversation,
Mhm.
and you want to make sure that on like a personal level, you're connecting with the other person. You don't want to come off as like a robot that's just like regurgitating. You're not an AI. You're not
Yeah.
just going to go in and just like, oh, thank you for the question, blah 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 blah, like, and just kind of spewing facts and details out, like, um, but to give you some like concrete advice on how you responded to that question about like, tell me about your experience, and then you talking about the podcast. You we talked much about the strategic versus tactical level?
We touched on it a little bit.
Okay, explain it to me.
Tactical is more like you actually drilling, you actually going to tactical. Strategic is like you planning it out, you setting up
Right.
the goals.
So my feedback on how you answered that was that you completely missed the strategic and jumped straight into the tactical. So like if I were to answer that question of, hey, I see that you did the student practicum. Um, you worked on a podcast. Tell me about that. The first sentence would be something along the lines, well, on a strategic level, we wanted to grow the scope of the podcast. So the way that we did this was we came up with a way to create an awareness campaign to expand our reach. And what's really cool about that is we leveraged AI to go in and clip up the podcast to the most interesting bits about it, to scale out our overall reach. And then, that's kind of it right there. Like, then that there are going to be questions like, really, how did you identify what were the most interesting tidbits? You could say,
The audience
that's a
is
great
interested.
question. Well, we went into the back end of YouTube, and if you look under the engagement tab, there's a chart that gives you a view of the retention, and then you can explain the retention curve. And you can say, well, what we did with the last week's episode is there were 3 peaks where people were most interested. We were then able to take those topics. We went back and listened to what we were talking about during those peaks, fed it through that AI, and then all of a sudden we were able to generate 10 clips to retarget the ideal audience for this podcast. So this is a little bit hard to explain. And it's hard because we're on a podcast too. Like, it adds like a whole nother layer of like almost performance. But is that making sense?
No,
Like,
it makes sense.
do you want to try? Do you want to try it one more time?
Yeah, we could try it.
All right, we'll try it one more time, and then we'll close out the podcast. So you're almost through. All right, Dejuan, I see that you got the student practicum where you worked with a podcast, and there's like analytics behind it. Can you tell me about that?
So within that podcast, our goal was we asked the teacher what his goal for his podcast was, and he said was to basically grow his podcast and reach a target audience. So what we did was the plan that we came up with was to basically take the most interesting parts of the podcast, clip those, and then run them through AI. Now, how we did that was
See,
basic.
I think you don't even have to go into the detail. So like, it's almost like you can just kind of start high level. Like, what's the overall strategy? What is the almost like the why? And then, is that feel uncomfortable? Just like saying 3 sentences of an answer?
I think so. I think that's
Interesting. Why
probably
do you
why.
think that is?
Maybe it's probably me assuming that I feel like they're already going to ask the question instead of just letting them
That's
ask
quite
it
an assumption though,
themselves.
right?
Yeah, it is. And I think that just me not just letting it
Yeah.
just happen naturally. I
Yeah.
think that's what it is. I think it's just me trying to lead it into my strengths instead of just letting them ask me about my
Well, it's
strengths.
funny because like I remember a month ago I asked you like, do you want to do like a mock interview? You're like, no, I got this. But now you're in like the hot seat. It's like a little bit more stressful than you probably anticipated, right?
Yeah,
Which I mean, this is perfect timing because you got when's your first interview coming up?
it is this Monday.
Bam. You got one day to kind of sit with this and kind of think with it, or think about like what we talked about. But I mean, we can go and like run through some questions if you want with the audio and the video off, just to help you prep. But all right, Craig, thank you so much for recording us and being the behind the scenes. This has been great. Dejuan,
Always
thank you so
happy to
much
be
for your
here.
time.
Thank you, Craig, and thank both of you for having me today.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoyed